For the past 20 years, America has essentially lost its mind. Well, stand by, because I think Americans are finally ready to fight for what they believe in. Today on the David Rutherford Show. What's up, everybody? I'm back on air, and it's been a long week for me. I've been on the road. I spent the last week out in California. I know what you're thinking when I say that, but I am going to tell you, I do love that state, man. I've spent a lot of time in my life out there. You know, my aunt and uncle are from out there. My grandparents used to live out there. My brother lived out there for 30 years. You know, I was stationed out there for almost my entire time in the Navy, and I spent time at my mid-year meeting in Laguna at the Monarch Bay Hotel. Boy, I'll tell you what, Jordy, that place is legit. When you can be in a five-star Waldorf Astoria on the company dime, man, that was a lot of fun. But what was really cool for me is, you know, every time I go to these meetings, you know, it's you know, big sales oriented. What are we doing right? How do we reach our clients, serve our clients a lot better? What are the things that the top guys are doing? It's one of those types of things. But man, there's such a great energy behind a lot of the guys that I spend a lot of personal time with when I travel, and I mentor and I coach them. And, you know, every time I go to this thing, we on the first morning at about 5 o'clock, we go down to the beach, and, you know, we do this great little PT session. And this year I was cool because I gave everybody a little assignment, and I said, hey, before you show up tomorrow, you know, come up with a great quote or something that you really lean on when you really want to drive that motivation. And I think, you know, that's a tool that a lot of people, I think, kind of find cliche, or these ideas. But here's the deal. There's things in your mind that stick, that get you fired up, right? There's ideas, there's quotes, there's whatever it might be. And my quote was Matthew 7:7, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, and knock and the door will be open for you. And, you know, we went all around this circle after we did these great exercises. My tired old ass is trying to do the push-ups, and my back's all flaying. And I definitely am not in my 30s anymore, but I'm trying to keep up with these whippersnappers. And, you know, we're hitting the surf zone. And man, it's just, we came together and really had this awesome thing. And what came out of that for me and that experience was this profound fellowship that emerged, right? This strength I saw in these young guys that were crushing themselves for our firm, that were out there grinding away from their families, you know, and what they were doing and the type of men they were. And I heard all these amazing ideas that they put out to the group. And man, there was so much to take away from it. But the thing that most stuck with me is just how strong-willed they were, right? Where their heads at, where their minds were at in terms of what they wanted to accomplish and achieve. Now, you know, the other aspect is after I left our meeting on Friday, it was Tuesday to Friday, you know, I got to spend some time with one of my closest friends out there in the world. Guy was at the agency where I worked with him there. I mean, this guy has a storied career. I mean, one of the smartest humans I've ever met, but also one of the most courageous and capable human beings. He's still a reservist officer, intel officer in the Marine Corps. He's a cop out there, and you know, he's got a young son and two other kids, and he's just a good man. And as we were talking and spent the day together and talked about him and what he's seeing on the streets day in and day out, and what he's hearing in the military, you know, he describes this new consciousness that people are starting to bring back to the forefront, this idea of what they want to accomplish in their lives. And so that's really what I want to focus on today. But before we do that, I just want to let everybody know again how grateful Jordy and I are for your presence listening to the show. If you could always subscribe and like, right? We're having a huge gain in YouTube, thanks to all the Sean Ryan listeners out there who joined us after me appearing on Sean's show. If you haven't found that yet, it's 7.5 hours of me bearing my soul, telling me my story about what I've learned in my life, how I've developed my motivational structure of what I call frog logic, and really how I've learned to be resilient in the most difficult times. And so if you're listening to the show, share it with a friend, share that show with a friend, share whatever you can. If you really enjoy what you're hearing, please visit the website, davidrutherford.com. Sign up. We still have the bundle, the 3-bundle series available for the 3 online courses. You can get a $600 value for $200. We've had a ton of people sign up for that. It's really doing awesome. Really love that. And so do that. And then also my book's available, The Poet Warrior, for early pre-order for release around the holidays this year. Go there. And then also, you can keep up on what we got on our merchandise too. We've got this new DRS shirt for you. We got a bunch of old Frog Logic stuff. So visit the website, buy a piece of merchandise, support us. We appreciate that. Oh, and also if you're an organization out there and you're looking for some type of motivation, man, I've been in this game a long time. I've worked with the top companies in the world. I mean, my company right now, we're one of the top asset management firms in the world, but I've spoken to the, major organizations, but I've also worked with tons of elite professional sports teams, won a World Series championship with the Boston Red Sox in 2018. This year, I worked for my second year in a row with the Penn State Athletic Department. Last year, I did the athletic department, student athletes, Penn State hockey. I've worked with Penn State lacrosse. And Penn State athletics had probably the best athletic season they did. So Dr. Kraft was gracious enough to welcome me back to start the year off right. And so, that's what I do. I help organizations and teams. I help them find those core attributes within that consciousness of what drives them to get fixated on what they need to do to accomplish the mission. So after this week of reflection, it really hit me heavily of where kind of the America is right now. And I believe America is in the middle of a split consciousness. Some people like to refer to it as that pendulum shift, back from one way hard, back to the other way. And what I think a lot of people don't really recognize is that this pendulum shift is going to be much more profound than the subtlety of the last pendulum shift, that they slowly kind of eked our consciousness. They pulled it from those traditional values, those conservative ideas, those things that we can count on within our institutions, within our religion, within our faith, and within each other, right? The safety and security of our communities, right? The safety and security of our nation, the economic freedoms and economic prosperity that has gotten us to be the best country in the world. And they pulled that back, right? They pulled it away and they started driving towards this other type of consciousness that was an illusion, if you will. It was radical in its content and its ideology, right? They started to manipulate how we were interpreting the world through these social conscious lens, through DEI, ESG, the manipulation of markets, the manipulation of immigration, right? Making me and you feel ashamed to stand up for what we believed in, the fact that we could be canceled. And I was canceled. I know what that feels like. And it was brutal. It was a true crisis of identity, if you will, that all of a sudden I realized that my message was under threat, right? That my freedom of speech had been eradicated by these tyrants, if you will. And so, all you got to do, and last week, as I'm in the midst of going through these meetings and really trying to help guys figure out a strategy to finish the year strong, I'm still paying attention to what's going on. And, we had, last week we had the U.S. military target drug running boats, man. And man, I tell you what, Jordy, that was one of the most awesome things that I've seen in a long time.
I said, hell yeah, brother, when I saw that.
I said, hell yeah. What makes a strong, patriotic American say hell yeah is watching a bunch of low-grade narco terrorists get vaporized in their little speedboat, man.
Got deleted.
that was deleted, right? To hell with them. And you might say, well, man, that's harsh. That's a little aggressive. And I say, you know what? To hell with that. Do you know how many people Jory fentanyl has killed over the last 5 years?
5 years? I'm not sure. It's probably close to 500,000.
It's about a little over 400,000 people, right? About 430, 440,000 people. That's more people were killed in fentanyl deaths in the last 4.5 years than in all of World War II.
So don't say that Trump's response is brutal. That's brutal.
No, that's not. We're not even close to brutal yet. Like I'll be stoked when we start to see, hundreds, if not thousands of narco terrorists eliminated, deleted, because that's what needs to happen. Your children are under threat. Your children have a greater propensity to die from fentanyl than anything else there is, because that's what's out there. They go to college, they go out partying on the weekends. Somebody gives them a little thing. Hey, here's a little, here's some MDMA, here's a little Adderall, here's whatever. Now all of a sudden it's a fake pill. It's laced with fentanyl. Now your kid is dead. That's what's taking place.
Unfortunately, I have known personally 2 people who have died from exactly that. They were about ages 20 and 22. And it happens. It's real. And I think everybody knows someone who that's happened to, or knows somebody who knows somebody. It's that pervasive.
That's right. And so, Jordy, I'm sorry about your friends, man. I mean, obviously, I've had several friends OD, team guy buddies of mine that have OD'd over the last several years, trying to escape their pain. And so it's so easily accessible, right? Hell, all you got to do is you got to look at the streets of Philadelphia and Zombieland or San Francisco or Portland. And it's shocking that the fact that in some places, the people that are in charge don't care. They're open air drug use markets. And that's people are sick of it. They're getting tired of it, right? And that's why, they were elevated to terrorists, and I'm stoked to see it. The other one is, these ICE raids. I see a tremendous amount of pushback that this is unconstitutional. You've got all these little district judges thinking that they can shape policy from this administration. And then, they're all radical ideologues as well, too, right? A district court telling, the executive branch how they can govern the country on a federal level. It's asinine to me. But that's what, we got another Supreme Court win with that just the other day. You ought to check that out. We did a big piece on just inequalities, and we see that way. We see violence that has picked up from all this illegal immigration. Now, if you're a person that sits back and says, well, you're racist enough that says, who's going to pick our fields, right? Or I heard someone on a podcast the other day say, well, who are going to be our doctors, making the presumption that only Indian people become doctors or whatever, or who's going to do that, or who's going to do that? Well, you look at the Hyundai plant that was raided last week, and that Hyundai plant, over 400, the whole thing was put and brought in the United States in order. It was one of Biden's seminal developmental projects and victories, right? 471 illegal immigrants living in that, working in that plant instead of red-blooded Americans. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. You want to know why there's so much poverty? You want to know no one could get a job? It's because all these illegals have been employed by the U.S. government, by all these companies, because they pay them less, right? And then you're upset because, or someone's upset, the left, these radical consciousness is upset because it's unfair. Fuck them. I don't care anymore. I'm over it. What I want fair opportunities for American people, right? I want fair opportunities for young kids that want to make the American dream a reality.
Can I bring up one point about that real quick?
Please.
So one argument you hear, it sounds very, very similar to a pretty terrible argument that I've heard in the past when people are talking about these ICE raids, talking about the deportations and talking about, oh, who's going to work the fields? Who's going to do this? We'll say, well, if we deport all these illegal immigrants, no one's going to work the fields. And then your next response is, well, why don't we just get Americans to work the fields? And then they'll say, well, the Americans won't work for those wages, and then those jobs won't be filled. And I'd say, well, why don't you raise the wages? And then they would say, well, you can't raise the wages because imagine the economic destruction that would happen if you had to increase that expense for all these different businesses. And I said, wait a minute. So you're saying you want to continue doing it in a moral act because the economy might be threatened. You know, that's the exact same argument that was used to continue slavery in the South. That was the exact same argument. And you're just repeating the same thing. I just think 100%. That you do the right thing and you figure out the economics and the budgets later. I think you could figure that out.
I agree. You do the right thing and the other things will take care of themselves, right? I mean, it's almost as if this crew, there's who are the anti-racists or whatever you call them, out there. They're actually more racist than the people that they're projecting. But that's the entire left. That's the whole idea behind the entire left, is to point the finger at the right and say, you're doing this when they're doing it themselves, right? When you look at the violent crime that's going on, right? You look at where violent crime is. It's in cities that have been ultimately destroyed by Democratic mayors, right? Police interactions have been, police departments have been defunded. They're struggling to get enough cops on the street. Violent crime is off the charts. And then they're like, well, we're sympathetic to the plight of impoverished people or minority people. And I said, you're not, but what about the majority of people who are being killed or maimed or butchered or stabbed to death on their transit into work? I mean, for me, you see, just last past week, you had a vet tech that was killed walking her dog by an illegal. You had the Ukrainian woman that had come overseas fleeing the war in Ukraine, who was stabbed by a black guy just out of the blue. You know what really pisses me off is that guy had 14 prior arrests, 14, and was let out over and over and over time. I did see a little bit of legislation that popped. Somebody's going to put through a bill that those judges that are those people that are letting these violent criminals out over and over, no cash bail bullshit, right? They will be held accountable, right? In some way, shape, or form. If something doesn't change, those people are going to be held accountable, right? So I'm telling you, this is going to change. And then on top of that, you also see the radical nature of trans violence that's just undeniable now. After the shooting in Minneapolis a couple weeks ago, you see this insanity taking place, right? And this person was distinctly mentally ill. So when are we going to start opening up the insane asylums again? When are we going to start doing what we need to do, taking insane, criminal, mentally ill people and putting them in, institutionalizing them? It's absurd that we just let them walk freely around and pretend that they're not having a negative impact on society. The other thing of that is you look at the sickness that's emerged out of the complete tsunami of SSRIs in young people, or benzos in young people, or Adderall in young people, right? And all of this is coming out. We're starting to see it. That's why there's an attack on RFK Jr., right? The pharmaceutical companies their time is up. They're ticking. And with that is going to come a reversal in their liability at some point, and they are going to be sued into oblivion, is my hope. Now, granted, I know what you're thinking, but he's anti-vax, blah, blah, blah. Dude, one of the coolest things I saw was the Surgeon General of Florida basically said, we're going to put the rights back in the parents of kids on whether or not they want to have their children vaccinated. They're literally getting rid of the vaccine mandates in Florida school systems now. And I hear everybody, oh my God, the measles, rubella, tetanus, everything's going to play out of control. We're all going to die. You know what? I don't believe it. I don't believe it because all of the data we're starting to see has been corrupted. Right? We're seeing that corruption not only within the medical industry, within that, but we also have seen it within every other aspect of our government, right? I'm not letting DOJ and FBI and CIA off the hook at all, man. I don't know. I watched two insane shows with people that were Epstein experts. Whitney Webb did a interview recently that was insane, which said, his human trafficking was just a small portion of his manipulation of global markets and arms trade, right? Then I saw Mike Benz did a huge piece, which was insane, like all of his financial ties. We know that, the deputy AG down in the island where his island compound was, she got fired for trying to bring a suit against JP Morgan. We know there's an intimate. So all of this stuff that we see day in and day out, no longer you can bury your head in the sand, right? You can't plead ignorance on your consciousness. Because what you're doing is you're negating your self-consciousness. Now, I know I've been belaboring the idea of that. And consciousness is probably the most complex concept that we have within our species. We don't know when it started specifically. We don't know how it started, but we do know it exists. And so just as a reminder to you, as you're listening to this on your drive into work or at your gym right now, consciousness is the state of being aware of one's own existence, thoughts, feelings, and surroundings. It involves subjective experience, self-awareness, and the ability to perceive and interact with the world. Philosophically, it's often described as the, quote, what it's like, and, quote, quality of experience. Example, what is it like to see red or feel pain? Scientifically, it's linked to brain processes, particularly in the areas like the cortex, but its exact nature remains a mystery, with debates over whether it's purely physical or involves something more like a non-material essence. Theories range from materialism, consciousness arises from brain activity, to panpsychism, consciousness is fundamental property of the universe. No single definition is universally accepted due to its complexity and the ongoing hard problem of explaining subjective experience. As I have spent a significant portion of my life trying to understand my own consciousness, how to develop it, how to shape it, how to create a framework of it that isn't pulverizing all of the time, right? That imbued state of suffering and pain, but really to where I can manipulate that consciousness, that self-consciousness into something positive, something motivational, something I can focus on. And out of that consciousness, what I've done is I've been able to focus on some very critical things. Now, one of the things that comes about is there's a social consciousness that takes place. If you were a part of the giant black pill, red pill, whatever pill you want to talk about of the COVID era, you recognize that mass formation psychosis was a real thing. We've seen that. We had Dr. Robert Malone on to talk about that before. And that's really the manipulation of the consciousness. I believe the social phenomenon of trans ideology and gender fluidity. I mean, I think that's a social phenomenon within the social, particular group within the social consciousness. And this happens, you see it's proven over the history of humankind that takes place. Well, I think over the last 20, 30 years plus, probably even back into the 80s where political correctness began to take hold, you can go back to the 20th century with communism or fascism or whatever ism you want to talk about, ideological. These things can sweep through entire bodies or groups of people. And so, one of the things I wanted to just briefly talk about is the social consciousness of America and how there's a split consciousness, obviously. Social consciousness is the awareness of societal issues, injustices, and dynamics, coupled with a sense of responsibility to address them. It involves recognizing how social, economic, and political systems impact individuals and groups, often focusing on inequality, discrimination, or environmental concerns. Some with social consciousness might actively support fairness, empathy, collective well-being through actions like advocacy, volunteering, or informed decision-making. Now, I found it funny, Jordy, when I put this stuff in, Grok, obviously, because I love Grok. I think it's the best one out there. And as Tim Dillon referenced on his appearance on Joe Rogan this past week, I like it when my AI gets put in timeout. That dude's one of the funniest human beings on the planet, man.
He's the best.
He is hilarious. So, when I initially talked about social consciousness, Grok spit out a very left-leaning answer for me. And he talked about, this is what, he said, social consciousness in the context of current American cultural dynamics manifests in various ways, reflecting awareness of pressing societal issues and efforts to address them. So here's what he listed. Here's what old Grok listed, right? Number one, racial equality and systemic inequality. All right. Talked about Black Lives Matter, some of the other stuff, George Floyd protesting, all that. Then the second one was climate change, environmental justice. Obviously went through all of that stuff. Oh, did you see Greta Thunberg's little boat over off the coast of Israel got drone bombed the other day? Yesterday, I think it was.
I did not see that.
Yeah. Some drone dropped something, a pyrotechnic, and caught their boat on fire. And the whole thing was on fire pretty rapidly.
No way.
Yeah. So climate change, environmental justice. 3, economic inequality and labor rights. We certainly saw a profound amount of economic inequality with the massive redistribution of corrupt wealth that took place over the $6 trillion that the Biden administration just basically handed out, giving some, my favorite was Stacey Abrams' nonprofit getting $2 billion post-election the last 2 months while they were in office. That was my favorite one, economic inequality. Labor rights. I loved how we now know that the teachers union wrote the CDC paper on lockdowns, basically pulverizing your child's development. All right. Gender and reproductive rights. You forcing to tell me that I have to say that a man with a penis and balls says he's a woman, and I have to acknowledge that dysfunction, right? Now, again, got it. You go do whatever you want in your own home. I got it. But if you're going to force me to say something that I don't believe and that I know is not scientific reality, then what you're doing is you're telling me that you want me to submit. You want me to submit to your tyrannical ideology. You want me to submit the way what I know based on my 53 years of hard living, that I'm going to just capitulate. Hell no. Done with that shit. That's not happening anymore, right? Digital equality or misinformation. Holy shit.
Dude, that's Orwellian as hell, dude.
Dude, that was the most, and I really believe that was the coup de grace for these nitwits, is like, when you start taking away people's ability to speak freely in America, that's going to piss some people off. Now, I know what everybody's saying who's already been hardcore red pill, black pill, whatever you say. Yeah, you say that, Rut, but you're still paying 36% in taxes. Hell, we went to the Revolutionary War for 2% tax on tea, but you're willing to do that. Now, I do understand that. And I think that's part of that economic imbalance. I'm a person that's beginning to believe that we should take a long, hard look at potentially ending the Federal Reserve. I know where you stand on that, Jordy. Bitcoin all day long and twice on Tuesdays. Yep. We got to do a Bitcoin show here soon, dude. All right.
Oh, please, dude.
Yeah, we're going to do a Bitcoin show. Because I need help. We're going to have some good people on too for that. All right. And that was what Grok spit out at me. And I was a little perturbed by that. I was like, whoa. So I immediately put into Grok, I said, Grok, that seems pretty radically, pretty left leaning there. What about the right? And so Grok apologized to me. He's like, you're right. That was left leaning. I apologize. Here's the right. All right. Second Amendment rights, personal freedom. I tell you what, man, if that's something that, when you think about that, you look at all the other countries that are collapsing around the world, what are they losing? They've lost their ability to carry a gun and defend their rights, and they've comprehensively lost their freedom of speech. And I think you have that, which was one of the greatest empires ever to exist. The British are literally collapsing in front of our eyes, right? Joe Rogan had that comic on. He goes back for existing. He's got some court cases. He walks in, and they arrest him for 3 expos, 3. And none of them were even inflammatory, that bad, right? And he's in jail. I think something around 5,000 people, right? And that they're trying to spread that across European Union wide. Now, what I do love is there is a profound backlash taking place as we speak. I'll do a weekend review here in a couple of days, and we'll get all that out about. But France's government is collapsing. You're seeing profound pushback in Italy and all these other countries where they're starting to realize. Ireland, people are over it. My favorite is the flags, and there's a unification coming on the British Isles right now. We're seeing the British flags that are the patriotism. People are painting on the streets, man. They're starting to realize that their existence is under attack. Their very existence, the British people, is under attack. And I think the French people feel the same. The Italians feel the same. I think people in other European countries are feeling the same for sure, right? So what else? Religious freedom, traditional values, right? I'm a Christian and Christ is king. And I'll tell you what, nobody's going to tell me when I can and can't say that. Nobody's going to tell me that I'm not putting my Christian values first and foremost. That's my armor that I lead with. And there's no one's going to tell me that, because I'm faithful to Christ, that I have to turn the other cheek and take this bullshit anymore. I'm done. I'm over with it. It's over. Christian people, they fight for what they believe. All you got to do is go visit our friend Raymond Ibrahim and listen to some of the stuff he's putting out, right? We literally had to beat back radical Islam in their intifada, their crusade that they began waging as soon as Muhammad died, all the way to where they punched into France through the Iberian Peninsula. It took 400 years to beat them off and kill them off the Iberian Peninsula. That is what is taking place right now. I just saw a video yesterday of a large contingency of Muslims praying on the grounds of Westminster Abbey. This is one of the most sacred Christian sites in the world. And they have the audacity and nobody stopping them, kicking them off. Well, guess what, Christians? Well, you better sharpen those blades, pick out those shields and get ready, because if you listen to their prominent mullahs and you listen to their prominent clerics, they are advocating for a complete and utter jihad and takeover of Western culture. And it's taking place right now. Stop denying the reality of this. Stop closing your eyes and living in that ulterior consciousness that that people have been lulled into sleeping, right? Economic freedom and anti-regulation. I think now we have been absolutely devastated. Small business owners have been intentionally devastated to support, what the real empire is, and it's the commingling of hard power and soft power. It's the relationships between BlackRock and the Central Intelligence Agency, Palantir and Microsoft and the State Department. It's USAID in the intelligence world, and how we prop up these transnational organizations that are engaged in hardcore criminal activity. And we see it where the corruption is overwhelming. Immigration and border security. You know what? I don't give a damn if people have been in the country and working hard. We need a reset now. We need a reset. We need to get rid of every single violent offender there is by far. And then we need to push out people that have seek political asylum and they're not really doing or contributing. They're not assimilating. And I think we need to get rid of them. I'm saying 20 million people need to go away. And watch what happens. Watch what happens to our political discourse. Watch what happens to our budgets in these municipalities that are spending billions and billions and billions of dollars of your tax money, my tax money, destroying my children by breaking the system with flooding. That's what the whole plan was. I'm telling you what, your self-consciousness needs to be awoken to recognize this is all strategic in nature. This is an organized attack on the consciousness of the American people. And finally, free speech and censorship. There's nobody better out there than Mike Benz. If you're not following him on X, I highly recommend it. Look him up. This guy has literally outlined, he spent thousands of hours detailing how the infrastructure of the American government, American economic institutions, American educational systems have essentially come together under these radical ideologies, this radical social consciousness, and have basically said, we will silence you. Well, I'm here to tell you, we're done being silent. And if your fragile state can't handle it, then fuck off. I just don't care anymore. It's over. We have to get back to a place where they fear us as we unfortunately allowed ourselves to fear them. It's got to be over. Now, are there some aspects of what they talk about that I agree with? Sure. But not when they're manipulated, not when people are ostracized or demonized for their color of the skin. Hell, man, you want to talk about a people that have been under attack? That's white people have been under attack for a long time now. Now, I'm not a person that's going to separate. I think all human beings deserve the same laws, the same standards, the same meritocracy system. And that's what the idea is behind America. And when you try gauging it one way or the other, that ain't going to cut it. Now, what you want to say, well, everything's rigged against minorities. Yeah, bullshit. I just don't believe it anymore. You know what's rigged? Corruption. People that are in positions to give quality education to those who can use it, that's rigged. Right? Welfare systems, right? SNAP, where you have $40 to $60 million in Coca-Cola products or high sugar products, high fructose sugar products being inundated, destroying these people and their health and the way they think and the way they operate. Hell, they're trying to get Ozempic on the schedule for Medicare, Medicaid, and all these programs, right? Because obesity has run rampant within minorities and made so many minority people obese, which affects their ability to think and work and have motivation, right? When they're living on the government's dime, there's no motivation. They're not healthy. And you blaming me for that when it's your people that are in these areas that are doing that to you? I don't get it. I really don't understand it. The control of the school systems and what's being taught in the school systems. Again, I watched my child last week, my oldest, in a project at school, and they were talking about people that had illegal affiliations. Like she was in a program where the assignment was to talk about how positive Beyonce is. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on here right now? Our consciousness has been under attack. And I'm telling you, this is the problem, right? And I'm also telling you that when societies, even big, small, whatever, when societies as a whole are under attack, they will only go so long before they are existentially in a position where they fear for their total existence. And that is taking place in America right now. That is taking place. Now, what you're going to see is you're seeing people start to believe that they're losing their sovereignty, right? What makes America great, right, is our sovereignty, our ability to manage ourselves as the light on the hill, right? That our system is functional and works. Well, people believe that that's under attack, whether it's through mass invasion of illegal immigration and migration, whether it's a mass assault on the economic system where young people can't have jobs that pay enough to where they can afford a new home because Blackstone, BlackRock, and all of these venture capital firms have gobbled up all these single-family units around the country and driven rental prices through the roof? You think that's not intentional? You think they don't want those young people to not go out, get married, have kids, and raise big families? Right? Just look at the reproductive rate within the majority of traditional American groups. Right? The other one is losing confidence in our institutions. Right? I'll tell you what, man, I see a lot of churches out there that have lost their minds, that are actively promoting transgenderism in their churches. Listen, I'm not going to church to be forced into an ideology. I'm going to church to have my faith in Christ reinforced, but I can't even do that anymore. And so I'm teaching my children that the church is inside of them. The church and their faith is inside of what Christ taught them, those traditional values of what matters and what doesn't. Right? We've lost confidence in our institutions, right? Government agencies, our HHS, CDC, the SEC. We've lost confidence in the FBI, the DOJ. We've lost confidence in the CIA. We've lost confidence in our banking system, right? Education systems. Why? Because this radical consciousness has seeped its way in, because you weren't willing to fight. You weren't willing to call out, to stand up for what you believe in. The one that really, I think, is scaring the most, which is now where we're at. It's kind of, it's this cascade of fear that builds up before people begin to fight back. And that's losing the sense of decency, the way we treat each other, and the way families aren't protected, and the way pornography has seeped into our children, and all of this hypersexualization of our young female daughters and nieces and friends. The way we've degenerated all of these things. Now, luckily, we do see a rise in young men. They're going towards traditional values, and that's a positive. They're listening to people like Joe Rogan. They're listening to people like Sean Ryan. They're listening to people out there like Andrew Huberman saying, hey, come back and regain your constitution by being in shape. Don't drink yourself into oblivion or party or use drugs, right? Get out there and focus on developing yourself, your constitution of how you believe and what you believe in as a patriot of this great nation and this great country, a patriot or a cornerstone of family values and traditions in Christianity. We're also losing our sense of safety, which is the final straw. I'm sure if you haven't seen it, go look it up, of the young Scottish girl that was caught on camera defending her friend, her sister, and she had a hatchet and a knife in one hand. And this meme has become the representation of fighting, because when your children are the ones raising their fists with blade in hand because no one else, the men of England and Scotland and Ireland and Sweden and Germany, the men of America are not defending our women and children, will stand the fuck by. Because a lot of men that have only wanted to just stay quiet and live their lives and raise their family and earn a living, we're getting upset now. We're getting pissed. And what you're going to start to have is the unfortunate reality of vigilante justice that's going to emerge. If they want to wage war on our children, we are comfortable with waging war against them. And that's where we're getting to. That's what we're moving into right now, is that split consciousness is driving in such a profound opposition of one and each other, where that middle ground has been deteriorated, where we can't even discuss openly and come together under focused, sacrilegious or sacrosanct ideas that keep societies together, the willingness to sacrifice for each other for the betterment of the crew, the willingness to stand true to what is right versus what is wrong, the ability to hunt out and eradicate corruption in the places that are governing us. Well, that's what's coming. And that's what you're seeing. And a lot of the things that the Trump administration is doing, man, some I'm a little frustrated, some of the foreign policy stuff, but I understand this. This ain't checkers, it's chess. So I'm giving them some leeway there. And they are bringing down criminals. They're out on the street. They're kicking ass. They're deporting illegals that are violent offenders and rapists. They're going after, they're cleaning up cities, right? We're projecting our strength overseas in a meaningful way by protecting our own borders first and foremost. We're building up the military. We're building up police forces again. What are you doing? What are you doing in your own homes? What are you doing with your own children? What are you teaching them to stand for? What are you doing at work? What are you doing to stand up and face down these radical ideologies? What are you doing to fight? Now, I believe wholeheartedly, hands down, this is by far the greatest country that has ever existed. And yeah, we're in a bit of a challenge right now, but we have the power to right this before it gets violent. And we do that by good people rogering up in your local communities and fighting back. Coming up with different types of economic opportunities to lift each other up locally, small business development, trading, helping each other, supporting one another, so small credit unions, right? Get away from those big banks. Get into Bitcoin, right? Start dealing with each other on a more meaningful way and support your local communities. Build up your churches or your groups, or start your own patriotic organization in your town, right? To fight back against the radicals that understand how to work together. They're activists. Well, it's time for you to be an activist now. If you want your country back, it's time for you to activate your willingness to fight for what you believe in. Now, I know sometimes, I get a little fired up, but that's because I love this country. That's because I love America and what it represents. I wouldn't have gone to war. Even in the wars that we went into, I wouldn't have done it if I didn't believe fully in what we represent and who we are. Now, things have gotten away from us, but we can reel them back in by holding those who need to be held accountable, by calling out the injustices we see, this distortion of social consciousness, and standing tall, shoulder to shoulder and shield to shield for what makes America great. All right. Jordy, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Man, I'm going to start being more positive. That's what I'm going to start doing. I'm going to start thinking of these things and bringing attention to these ideas or these stories. But man, we have the capacity. We have the Constitution to do it, both internally, psychologically, as well as the Constitution that governs us, right? That beautiful document and the Bill of Rights that was created. But we need to come together, man. And so if you're out there and someone needs to hear this, go ahead and share it with them. Maybe it'll light a fire in their gut and get them fired up to stand up and get after it. Or maybe they're already a part of the team right now. I see it more and more out there. More and more I hear people are tired of what's taking place. And it's not going to go away. We're not going to go away. And we're going to unify, and we're going to get together, and we're going to put down this tyranny once and for all. All right. Listen, we appreciate you. We appreciate you listening. Please help share the show. If you've got somebody you care about who needs to hear this, share it with them. Leave a comment, subscribe. We need all of that. we're just so blessed to be able to get on the microphone and do this. So, love on your families, pray for America to get better, and Godspeed. Thank you. Thank Christ. Thank you, Jordy. Thank my family. And hoo-yah. Let's get after it.